Hey y'all, my name is Jasmine Jones. I'm a licensed clinical social worker, and you are now watching Black Girl Therapists in the Wild. And today we're going to be talking about EMDR. What is EMDR? You say it is eye movement desensitization reprocessing therapy. And I am currently doing a training in it. I am halfway through the training, thank God. It took most of the month of September to get through the first half. And it was just like a training every Monday for 3 months in September, for 3 Mondays in September. So, but still, it was like all day. And you know, my ability to focus is not that great, but I'm glad that I am taking this training because it's very interesting. And I thought maybe to help me remember some things about what it is and why it does what it does, I figured why not tell you guys what it is and why it does what it does, so that, you know, you guys can know about different modalities of therapy that you can ask for when you are seeking out a therapist. So, EMDR was coined by Francine Shapiro in 1995 in her textbook, and again renamed and retooled in 2001. First, we need to go into how our brain processes memories. We have what's called a triune brain, or 3 brains in our head, that's all connected into one. So if you could make like a little fist, and basically we first have our brain stem right here, which is called our lizard brain. So it's, you know, our basic animal instinct, our basic animal urges, our physical being. It controls muscle control and, you know, gut control and things like that. So it's connected to our body specifically to control bodily functions, as well as basic instincts like fight, flight, or freeze and things like that that happen when we feel we are in danger. Next, we have the limbic brain. That part of our brain controls emotions and basically is focused on either things that cause us pleasure or displeasure. It's very black and white. This part of the brain holds the amygdala and the hypothalamus. If the amygdala senses a threat, it can process the threat through the neocortex, which is the third part of the brain, and classify it either as useful or useless, and it can collect over time based off of things that we've experienced that have been dangerous. So basically, it just piles up data that we've experienced over years, and either it's useful and we can use it and we've learned something and things like that, or it's useless and it's gotten rid of and we don't need it. When it comes to trauma specifically, that is why as soon as the trauma is experienced, we need to, the faster we get help in processing and understanding the trauma, the easier it is for that dangerous experience to be processed by the neocortex and either keep the useful information, like, you know, I don't know, tell people if somebody is hurting you, and get rid of the useless information, such as freeze if you feel you're in danger, even if you're not in danger. So the brain stem is the person driving the car. The emotional brain is the gas that fuels the car, and the engine is the neocortex. But if the person driving the car and the fuel don't got it together, the engine ain't gonna have it together either, honey. So when the brain stem and the limbic brain are activated, the body will do whatever these parts of the brain tells it to do. It doesn't matter. So the neocortex is the rational part of the brain, the conscious part of the brain. And basically the conscious part of the brain is like, bitch, no, you're not in danger. It's just a dog. It's behind the fence. Like, it's not going to bite you. But because memories are held that, you know, are in the emotional part of the brain and in the animal instinct part of the brain, so it's held in the emotions and the animal instincts, doesn't matter. Your body's going to do what the animal instincts and the emotional part of the brain says. Fuck you, consciousness. So that's why when you have moments where you're like, but I knew that this person isn't going to hurt me, like logically I know that this person's not going to hurt me, but I still had a panic attack. I don't understand what's going on. I don't know what is that? No, it's your two parts of your brain, the brain stem and the emotional part of your brain, that are very just black and white, processing things black and white. And your memories can be held in there. So your hypothalamus controls your memories and things like that. Your amygdala controls whether or not you're in danger and things like that. And so those memories can just get down in there. It's like think of like a cystic acne pimple, and how all of that gunk just piles up in it, and then you pop it, but there's still more gunk underneath that you don't know about, and so then it comes back like a month later and you're like, what the fuck, I popped it, it was gone, it healed, and then now it's back. So every experience of danger we have is piling up in our limbic and emotional brain. In our brain stem and our emotional brain and our limbic system, and it's just piling up and recycling in our body. So I always mention this book called The Body Keeps Score, and that's basically what it's talking about. Your trauma memories are not just something that you consciously remember. It's also something that gets stuck in your unconscious, in your emotions, and in your body. And you have to work those things out in order to move forward and live a healthy life. So now let's talk about the neocortex. So the goal of any trauma therapy, any therapy really, is to move the storage of negative emotions, negative memories from your limbic system, from your emotional brain, to the neocortex. That's the bigger part of your brain that processes through things. It's more rational, it's conscious, it's aware, and it can kind of just process through what's going on and let it go if you don't need it. So we're pushing stuff up from your body, up through your emotions, out into your consciousness, so that you can think through it logically and let it go. And that's what EMDR does. It's pushing out. But it's very intense because we're doing this. It's kind of like, think of mindfulness on crack. So mindfulness basically says that the more present you are in a situation, so the more you're aware of your physical environment, then the less likely you are to be focused on negative things that are coming up for you from your past or worries about your future. So with this, we are looking at what Shapiro postulated one day while she was like taking a walk in the park. She started to notice that when she was going through cancer treatment, so she started to notice that when she was walking and a negative thought would come up, her eyes would just automatically move back and forth. And she is a practitioner of spirituality, ancient Eastern medicine, meditation, things like that. So she was really deeply into mindfulness. And so mindfulness was telling her that she needed to notice the fact that her eyes were moving back and forth. Like, what is this about? So she would go on these walks and she would just notice that whenever her negative thoughts would come up, her eyes would just automatically move back and forth. She would process through the thoughts, think about them, experience them, and then she would feel better. So she got one of her therapist friends, I think it was another doctor, and asked him, like, let me try something on you. So basically, I just imagine her just going to her friend like, hey, you want to try something? And he's like, yeah, sure, let's try something. And then she's like, okay, so I'm going to sit you here, and then I'm going to do this, and you got to follow my fingers, and then tell me what you're thinking about. And I'm just going to do this, and you're just going to follow it and tell me what you're thinking about. And then so he was like, yeah, sure, why not? I'll do that. And so she did this, and then he did this, and then he processed through some memories that he might have had in the past. And then she saw that, he was able to get through them quickly. So what was happening was that think of like moving back and forth. It can be this. It could be tapping, but at the same time, you're talking about a memory that's stuck inside of you. And basically, you're being forced to stay present with this and process through that memory. The therapist barely does anything. The therapist is just doing this. And this is your anchor. So think of this as an anchor to the present so that you can pull all of that trauma that's stuck inside of your body and your emotional mind into your consciousness and actively think about it for about 45 minutes to an hour. So we're forcing you to sit and think about memories that have been painful for you and to process them in a conscious, logical way for about an hour. Usually what happens, so this is a part of why it works. Usually what happens when negative thoughts or negative emotions are triggering our past trauma is that we either try to ignore the thought, we get lost in it and we respond. We have that fight, flight, or freeze response, and we become intently focused on that. So basically, it's like we go in a time machine back to the past every time we are re-triggered by a trauma. So we can't process through it. We can't think through it. We're just either hyper-focused on it or we want to get away from it as soon as possible. We're not thinking through what's going on. Doing this with a therapist to stop you, to ground you, to prepare you for this. You need a therapist. There's YouTube video ASMR. Don't do that. Don't do those YouTube ASMR videos and think that you can reprocess your own trauma and things like that and then get stuck somewhere and have a breakdown at home by yourself because you've brought up a memory that's triggered your fight, flight, or freeze response and now it's hard to get out of it. No, you need a therapist there to basically guide you through. So basically the therapist will sit, do this. You can do tapping. So it's called eye movement desensitization, but the goal is to reprocess. We're reprocessing the trauma, getting it out of our body, getting it out of our emotional mind, and processing it through our logical mind so that it can come out. And so you can do tapping, rocking back and forth. It's just the bilateral movement that is keeping you focused on your present situation. And what happens is that as you focus on the present, you don't get sucked into the past while you're processing these emotions. That's all it is. So, and I did it in a training, and basically all it was just me, thinking about what happened to me, thinking about my experiences and working through them while also staying present. So I'm not having flashbacks. I'm not having panic attacks. I'm not crying. Well, you might start crying because you're thinking about things that are upsetting for you, but at the same time, it's kind of like you're crying in the present. You're not crying as that little child that was hurt, and things like that. So it's really amazing. And so what Shapiro called this the way the brain can be disrupted in its process of going through and processing memories and trauma is the adaptive information processing model. And so basically this describes how trauma can be stored in the brain and, create these maladaptive responses that, can come up whenever, even when you're not in danger. And so most talk therapies just deal with the neocortex, the cognitive. They'll sit there and talk to you and you'll go through your trauma and things like that. But you're still having physical symptoms or you're still having nightmares and things like that. So what EMDR, any other kind of somatic bodily type therapy does is it works with the whole brain. It works with your lizard brain and your brain stem. It works with your emotional brain and your hypothalamus and amygdala, and it pushes all of that stuff out. So what do you guys think about that? That trauma and memories can be stored in your body and in your emotions, but not in your consciousness as much. It should be brought to your consciousness. Logically, what happened to you, but a lot of times it's not. And then you just keep repeating the same trauma experiences in your body and in your emotions until you go and get help and you work on yourself. And so I think that's an amazing thing to learn about yourself, about the human process and being a human being, and understanding that if you don't work on it, it's gonna fall apart. If you don't do it, it's gonna fall apart. It's gonna stay the same. Like, there's no holding in, and it's stronger. It's stronger to hold in your emotions and not deal with them and ignore them. No, it's ruining your body. It's ruining your brain. It's ruining the way that you see the world. If you don't work through these things, it will ruin you. And that doesn't mean that you're broken or you're a bad person. It just means that there's some stuff here that needs to be worked on so I can have a regular life. And I think that's a positive thing to say also, is that it can be fixed. So when you see what the process is, like how it gets stuck inside of you, how it gets stuck in your brain, how the three parts of your brain need to work together to eject it out of you, then you can kind of see that this is fixable. This is maybe not fixable, like, there's nothing's 100%. Even this, I mean, people come out of it saying that they feel totally healed, but then, I mean, there are people that they were talking about in training that, the pandemic hit and they needed to do another reprocessing session. And so, it's not 100%, but it's damn near close. Once you kind of allowed your brain to kind of get some of that gunk out, then it's like you feel good. Like, people have said that after a therapy session, they will be fine. They don't need to talk about it anymore. They don't need to like assess with the therapist how they feel. They just like, oh no, I'm fine now. Like, I was able to face the monster that was inside of me, in my body and in my memories and in my emotions. And I was able to be forced to sit here for almost an hour and go through this process. And now I feel pretty damn good. It's a very quick deletion of negative memories and negative emotions inside of you, and you just kind of go memory by memory, or even just emotion by emotion, like tying your emotion, like, where is that emotion coming from? And then you're just noticing, where is the emotion coming from? You're noticing, when did the emotion start? You are going through this. The therapist is only stopping occasionally after each pass of their hand or each pass of tapping, and asking you, what are you noticing? And you just tell them what you're noticing. And then when you tell them what you're noticing, they'll just say, okay, notice that. And it's basically very client driven. And another reason why you don't go on YouTube and go on the ASMR and do it is also because in therapy, there's a lot of prep work. Like, I need like at least 1 or 2 sessions beforehand where we're talking about, your memories that you want to work on, the negative cognitions that you have about yourself, the negative thoughts you have about yourself, positive thoughts that you want to work on, grounding techniques that we need to do in order to help you calm down and pull yourself out of this if it becomes too much for you. And so it's like kind of like having a safety word, because you can get lost in the sauce and have like reactions and stuff that you don't want, and it can be too much, and you might have to just step back because you're being asked to face these memories in your present environment instead of ignoring them or not talking about them and things like that, or having a flashback and being pulled all the way back to the past, like in Back to the Future, and and not knowing how to get out of it. So now it's like, no, we're going to be in control of this, and you're going to talk about it, and you're going to experience it, and you're going to think about how you're feeling in your body right now. You're going to think about how you're feeling emotionally. You're going to think about what memories are triggering what, and we're going to stay here. We're not going to be jerked back, So it's intense. So there's a lot of prep work that goes into it. It's not just, oh, we're going to turn on the ASMR and we're going to do the video and we're going to do it ourselves. No. I asked my trainer about that. I was like, so, there's like videos online where people are just like doing that shit themselves. And so like, what does that mean? And he was like, they're going to hurt themselves. They're going to hurt themselves really bad if they do that shit. I was like, oh. And then I thought about it and I was like, yeah, you kind of need a coach for this to pull you out. You can't just be like doing this by yourself. So yeah, I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But yes, let me know what you guys think. Like I said, it's a lot of information, so I'm gonna try to edit this, make it look pretty, and put pictures and shit like that. I've been practicing my editing skills, so I feel like, you know, things are just gonna get bigger and better, and I think that is amazing. And so yes. Yes, I will talk to you later, and my video for Lovecraft Country episode 8 will be up probably tomorrow because it takes a while to export files, and so I'm going to be sleeping through that. But yes, I hope you guys had a good day. I hope you enjoyed this video, and later days.